horse is a cart, single season record. One man stands above all others. Juan Montoya's 7 victories give him the title of rookie sensation. Another win today, and he may leave Houston with the title of cart champion. From the streets of downtown Houston, Texas, it's the CART FedEx Championship Series, the Texaco Grand Prix of Houston. This is the day that Juan Montoya has a chance to wrap up his championship. But in order to do that, he's going to have to stand on this podium when this day is over and get some help from Dario Franchitti, who will have to finish well down in the order as well. But here's some numbers to consider. This weekend, throughout the practice and qualifying, there have been 72 off-course excursions by 25 of the 26 cars in competition. The only one who has not been off-course at all has been Juan Montoya.
And Juan is as relaxed as I've seen him during his rookie season. Dario Franchitti, he's more on edge than I've seen him the last few years. Really, this track is bumpy, it's hot. Both teams have great mechanical preparation and pit stops. Clearly, the pressure is on the shoulders of Dario Franchitti if he wants to take the championship away from Juan Montoya.
All right, let's take a look at the starting grid. On the pole is Montoya. Alongside, Bryan Herta. 3 of Montoya's 7 wins are on temporary circuits. He leads the points battle now by 29 points.
You might say, Paul, that Juan Montoya is so hot they got to have a giant fan down in here in his pit to cool everybody off. Consider what this young man has done. He's already tied the record for poles in a season for a rookie with his 7th. If he wins this race today, he equals CART's all-time record for victories in a single season, held by Andretti and Unser at 8. He's so calm, so cool, so collected, it's hard to believe. Remember, he's won already 3 times from the pole this year.
In the second row, it's Team Green, Paul Tracy, and his teammate, Dario Franchitti. Franchitti stumbled the last 2 races, finishing 10th in Vancouver and making an early exit from Laguna Seca.
Paul, we talk about the pressure on Dario Franchitti. Well, what is the team strategy? Well, they have adjusted his car to be easy on the tires. What they want to do is they want to push Juan Montoya into that flamboyant driving style that we have come to know and love. They're hoping if Juan Montoya slips and slides, he'll wear out his tires, then they can go in for the kill.
Looking at the remainder of the grid, the third row, Max Papis and Gil de Ferran. Row 4, good run for Naoki Hattori. Tony Kanaan is outside. The fifth row, Jan Magnussen and Adrian Fernandez. Row 6, teammates Michael Andretti and Christian Fittipaldi is back. The 7th row, teammates Greg Moore and Patrick Carpentier. The 8th row, Richie Hearn, Jimmy Vasser to the outside. In row number 9, Cristiano D'Amata and Mark Blundell. The 10th row, Helio Castroneves and Scott Pruitt. Row 11, Michel Jourdain Jr. and Robbie Gordon. Mauricio Guzman and Andrea Montermini make up row 12. The 13th row, Memo Gedley and Al Unser Jr. Well, here's the way the game has to be played today. Montoya has to come up on the podium, and Dario Franchitti really has to stay below 7th if Montoya expects to come home with the championship today. 66 points left in the season, 44 at the end of this day, with just 3 more races, including this one, to go. Onboard cameras, we look through them for you as we consider the start of this race. And let me remind you that very much like Mid-Ohio, they will start this race on the backstretch and then come around and take the flag again at the start-finish line on the pit straight. Christian Fittipaldi has one of our onboards. Is down the pit stretch into turn number 1. Barry Green talking to Paul Tracy. 1.57 miles around 100 laps. Race was rain shortened last year in its inaugural run.
And the big story this weekend has been engines. Honda and Ford dominating the top 12 positions. The Mercedes runners suffering from a drivability problem, but the Toyotas were very strong in morning warm-up. Cristiano D'Amata being the quickest.
Jan Beek suggested the strategy to you as they come into their pairs coming off. Keep an eye on the cars in the second row. Strategy there is to pressure Montoya. No start. No start. they'll have to come around to this point again on the circuit. Again, led by the pole sitter Montoya. Here's what the circuit looks like.
And the start of the race will work here. The restarts and the checker will fall in the middle of the pit straight. Primary passing is at the end of the long back straightaway. Turn number 5. The drivers reach 180 miles an hour. Remember, that's where Tracy had his problem last year with Franchitti. 2 big changes of surface from concrete to asphalt. It's very bumpy there. All the corners blind to the drivers on initial turn-in.
Well, that message is that Bryan Herta, according to the officials, was lagging back on the start, and they want him up even with Montoya. So down the pit straight again, and then a couple of corners onto the back. Past couple street circuit wins for both Franchitti and Montoya, and how they have performed. So that will become part of the consideration for today as well. Very tight, very rough. The roads are crowned, so they fall off from the center. And that, too, makes it very difficult. The problem before was Herta not being up alongside of the pole sitter. He is now. We watch for the green flag. Field comes nicely off that corner. And again, they disallow the start. This time, I think, because Herta surged forward.
He did. You could see Montoya checking that right mirror, coming out of turn 3 and turn 4 prior to coming onto that back straightaway, looking for the flag. Montoya trying to make sure that he's got Herta in his sights. Herta's responsibility is to pace the pole sitter, Juan Montoya. And clearly that time, Bryan got the jump. Jim Swintel, the starter, decided no go, through the yellow. We'll have to do it again.
And as a matter of fact, what they did tell, they being the kart officials, tell the front row was, we want you to come off that corner fairly slow and give an opportunity for most of the field to come off, pair up, become aligned, and then we'll go green.
And a lot of the drivers that I've talked to think that the majority of the Chip Ganassi trying to coach Juan Montoya. But most of the drivers think that the primary passing will occur on the starts and the restarts. They think as the race goes on, tire wear will become a problem. The marbles will get deeper. It'll really take an act of bravery in order to try to get passing done, unless you've been conservative and you've got a better car underneath you as the laps wind down.
And we should not forget the temperatures here today. They have been climbing through the afternoon. It is very, very hot. Well, let's see if they can get it done this time. Slow off the corner. They begin to accelerate. This time we get the green. And boy, take a look at Tracy. Rest of the field comes down. Tracy comes up through the front row past Herta, drops into second.
Farther back, you could see Naoki Hattori trying to get down the inside of Gil de Ferran. Unfortunately, got it slowed down before they turned into 5.
That one did not work for him, but look at the battle now as Franchitti tries to get down and inside. Can't do it. There goes Franchitti behind Max Papis in the Miller Lite car. And Papis is lined up behind his teammate, Bryan Herta. So it's Montoya, Tracy, Herta, Franchitti, Papis, and de Ferran.
This is one of the transitions onto the concrete. Watch the cars bounce as they come off this section. You will see a number of manhole covers. The drivers sometimes abandon traditional line technique, simply trying to get the best run over the top of the manhole covers, making sure that the loaded tires during cornering or braking aren't over the top of those steel covers.
Montoya jumps from the pole position to the lead of the race, but is being pushed, or is pulling, Paul Tracy. And Tracy's going to stay right there with him.
And as Jan talked about at the opening, most drivers that I've talked to said that between 12 to 15 laps, the tires take a significant drop off in performance. Team Green's strategy is to get Paul to push Montoya, trying to get him to use his tires with that driving style that he uses to his advantage. Franchitti, much smoother, much more consistent, should have a better car. 12, 13, 14, 15 laps into this run.
Herta in the shell number 8 has been able to close in just a little bit, but the story and the focus will remain at the front between Montoya and Tracy, and what Tracy's strategy will be, not only to win the race, but to affect the championship. Jan?
Yes, that is true. I just spoke with Barry Green. I said, is the idea to use Paul Tracy as the rabbit to go and try and wear out the tires of Juan Montoya? He said, well, maybe, but right now we're just racing. We're racing hard. There's no strategy other than going as fast as we possibly can.
Well, you would think, in fact, if you're going to begin to start really pushing a team strategy, you might not do it until later in the race after the first, if not the second stop.
And in a situation like this, we can see that Dario has been struggling back there with Max Papis. Max has now pulled out a little bit of lead. Dario has been so good in the past on cold tires, on starts and restarts. And I think now Paul Tracy obviously is running better of these two Team Green cars. And as Jan said, I think the strategy now is just for Paul to go out and try to win this thing.
Looking back up the order, here comes Herta, here is Papis, and there is Dario Franchitti, the other participant in the championship battle. Only two now can win it. When they came here, there was a mathematical chance for Paul Tracy until that single point for sitting on the pole went to Juan Montoya, but the mathematical chance was kind of tongue-in-cheek, because in order to do it, Tracy would have had to won every race to the end of the season, while both Franchitti and Montoya finish out of the points. There is Franchitti with DeFerrin and Tony Kanaan lined up behind him.
And our top three cars of Montoya, Tracy, and Herta are now 0.7 of a second quicker than this next group of Papis, Franchitti, DeFerrin, and the rest.
Back at the front of the field, looking back from Juan Montoya's car to pursuing Paul Tracy. Tracy has stuck right with him, but once again, Herta has dropped slightly back and continues to be pursued by Max Papis. We'll be back. You look down on the circuit here on the streets of Houston from the Honda Helicam. Nothing has changed since we've been away. It continues to be led by Montoya, but now look there. Here is DeFerrin. DeFerrin just made that move, and now Tony Kanaan begins to worry Franchitti. We'll take a look at how DeFerrin got around him just as we came on the air. Here is DeFerrin making the move. And it seems like Franchitti is playing a very, very careful game about it, which is a bit of a reversal from where he's been. Tony Kanaan came up alongside, almost got him as well. We'll continue to monitor that battle, but well, let's stay right with this. We have a guest in the booth. We'll introduce him to you in just a second. Someone I know you're going to want to hear from, but Tony Kanaan is now working very hard on Franchitti. Magnussen comes up behind as well. Kanaan comes past Franchitti. So now the question becomes, is this Franchitti just being careful? Have tires gone away? Or what's going on? What do you think, Parker?
Well, there's no way that he's playing a conservative game. Obviously,
Frankitti's got a problem all over the place.
You can see the back of the car stepping out. Obviously, it looks like he's got a rear tire problem. If someone can outbrake Dario that easily, then something's wrong. He has got to be on the charge if he wants to stay in position for this championship. And it looks like right now he's in serious trouble.
Another guy with a problem is Naoki Hattori, who fell from 9th to 13th in a single lap. He's had a very good weekend. While we watch this battle, I want to introduce you to the voice of Roberto Moreno. We've been calling him the super sub all year because it seems every car he gets into, he often does a better job than the guy in it. Welcome, Roberto.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to be here.
The big question is, with all this great performance you've had this year, do you have anything coming up? You have a deal for next year?
Well, I must say it's terrible to come here and watch everybody racing and you outside, but it has been good for me to have a break since I do all my negotiations on deals. And I think I've made big progress this weekend, and I'm quite certain that you're going to see me in a full-time ride next year, very, very competitive. I can't say yet who and exactly what, but pretty soon the team will be announced.
Well, your teammate from 2 weeks ago, Michael Andretti, just got around Franchitti. The car that you drove is lined up right behind Adrian Fernandez to try to get around Franchitti as well. And I guess my question is, the big rumor we're hearing is that there might be a second Newman-Haas alternate team. Does that have anything to do with you?
Not that I know. I don't know anything on that news. It's news to me. All I can say is I love those guys, the big Kmart and Newman-Haas team. And also I love the Pac West team. They've done a great job for my career. I have a lot to thank you, both of those teams and everybody there, because they made my career, they made me go up this year, my career, which is leading me to a full-time ride next year.
Excuse me, this is getting way too good. Christian Fittipaldi and Adrian Fernandez. Franchitti moves to the outside. Both of them get past, and Franchitti he is really having a serious problem. Jan Vikas, you have any idea what it is?
Well, I just spoke with the crew, and engineer Don Halliday. He says they don't know what the problem is, but they're looking very carefully on the monitor. They suspect it might have something to do with tires, but they're not sure. They're asking him, can you go 4 more laps? If you can, we'll bring you onto pit road and try and give you a new set of tires and fix the car.
We can see the graining, especially on the right rear here of Dario Franchitti's tire. Look at how dark it is across that tread section. He is losing that right rear tire. And this can be because of just car setup or the way he's sliding the car, but you can clearly see that those 2 rear tires are graining and graining badly.
Roberto Moreno, how much of a mistake, how much of a slide would it take to get you in that much trouble?
It's basically the setup of the car that does that.
Helio Castroneves off course. Don't see any obvious damage, excuse me. They're gone full course yellow. Sorry, Roberto. They've gone full course yellow. And oh, my goodness. There's the championship battle. There is the problem that you could not afford to have happen. Montoya comes around the corner and clips the car. The championship fight will go on. This is a substantive change, Parker.
That is exactly the sort of thing Juan Montoya didn't need. I'm sure that Chip Ganassi was telling him that Franchitti was falling back. Let's have a replay and see if we can watch this exactly and what happened. Obviously, they had yellows out for that flag. You can see the racing line here is in this area. Watch now as Montoya enters from the right of your screen. He had a lot of understeer, a lot of speed going in there. I don't think he would have made that corner whether Castroneves would have been there or not from the looks of it as he went in. We can only assume that if he had an engine problem, had fluid, we don't know.
Jan Vikas.
And the rear tires were being pulled over the wall, and in fact, they were very green for Dario Franchitti. He gets a fresh set of tires. He's out of here. What a bonus for Dario Franchitti. A damaged car on one hand for his competitor, and now he gets fresh tires.
And Roberto Moreno, as you were looking at it, you're wondering too much speed, or could there be some oil down?
If you see that 2 cars have gone wide there, something might be on that corner that's different than from the start.
But on the other hand, isn't that something that you learned back in Racing 101 rather than up at this level?
Well, sometimes it happens so suddenly you don't see it.
That's fair.
It could be something that even with the darker visor you don't see it. It can be a number of things there.
And if Castroneves had an engine problem and he got in his own oil and went off and Montoya was right behind him.
All right, we're going to look back from Juan Montoya's car as he gets into this problem. Not sure what this will tell us. And again, the information isn't much, but the one thing it does show us is that the corner workers, many of them from the Houston region, the SCCA, did have the yellow flag out and flying, waving in that corner as Montoya came in. That is the 4th DNF of the year for Juan Montoya. Naoki Hattori has dropped back to 20th, and Scott Pruitt got past Castroneves just before that incident on the race course. Tonight, the New York Giants will take on the New England Patriots on ESPN. And then Monday on ABC, Steve Young leads the San Francisco against the Arizona Cardinals. The 30th anniversary season of Monday Night Football continues. In our first Toyota Spotlight of the day, we want to take a look at Juan Montoya and his year, the lesser accomplishments of this year. You will remember at Toronto, into the barrier and in trouble. On another street circuit at Detroit with our friend Roberto. And then, of course, today, and this one cost an early shot at the championship when he hit Helio Castroneves, the right front, and out of the running. So they're still under the full course caution as they clean up from the accident involving Helio Castroneves and Juan Montoya. We hope we'll get to talk to him, though the first report was that he headed right back to his transporter, obviously frustrated. Why do you guys do that?
Oh, it happens sometimes. Sometimes you're trying too hard and you concentrate too much in the corner and you forget that it's a different situation there.
Takes a little bit to come down.
Indeed, indeed. And you're always trying to do the most, to get the most out of the yellow flags. So it happens. We all make mistakes. We're human beings.
All your different substitutions this year, which were all spectacular. But how difficult is that in terms of communication and how you talk with each and every team?
It's been very, very challenging for me, which has been good because it's sort of any challenge motivates me. And so jumping from a team for another team, it's a new challenge, and you have to learn how to deal with the engineers, how to communicate with them, and it's just so difficult, everything. But I've been lucky because everybody helped me this year. The PacWest team and the Newman Haas team, they're all behind me to try to achieve the best result. And I was able to make the most out of a situation, and we got the good results. I'm very, very happy that my last running, I got a podium and a second place, my best result ever in kart, and I can only win now. So I'm really, really excited because things are going to happen for me for next year, and I'm chasing now the win and fighting for the championship.
What a good year you had as well, and we have enjoyed it. We hope to see a lot more of it. Let's go to Jan Beekes.
Well, we've been talking about these tires, and these are the rear tires here for Dario Franchitti. You may have seen it when we went to break. This thing is toasted, and he was so fortunate to catch a full course yellow. I spoke to Dwayne Joyner, the Firestone engineer, and said, what makes this happen? He says simply too much wheel spin. Coming off the corners, getting loose, spinning these tires will just rip the rubber right off. I then went to his engineer, Don Halliday, and said, what changes are you going to make? He said, well, we took some front wing out, and obviously we got to be careful not to spin the rear wheels. We have not had this trouble all weekend long.
They remain under the full course caution. Dario Franchitti has now dropped to 18th. We'll be back after this message and a word from our ABC stations. Racing here at the Texaco Grand Prix of Houston, but Bryan Herta suddenly darted offline and is now on his way into the pits, apparently with some pretty serious tire problems. His right rear going totally flat. Now, here's how that restart occurred. Now, he stalled it. He gets going finally. This is the restart.
Now, watch his left front tire here, Paul, as he comes in. Watch it lock up. That's because the right rear is low. It goes down. The left front comes up. Pappas, Kanaan, Magnussen, Christian Fittipaldi all get by.
And as you also saw in that restart, Paul Tracy just took off. And here is Bryan Herta as he comes back up to speed with fresh rubber on the car, but it has been costly to him. Up at the front of the field, it's Paul Tracy, and all alone, a 6-second lead over the second place car of Max Pappas. He got a great restart. They did give him the green, and Tracy was gone. As we mentioned just before the break, Dario Franchitti dropped well back in the field, but here are some of those that are on the move coming forward through this field at this time. So a lot going on all of a sudden, and much of it happening with that full course yellow, with some taking the opportunity to go in, make what changes they thought they need, and others deciding to stay out. Now, talking about that situation with the tire problem with Dario Franchitti, Roberto Moreno, you were watching that. How much can they do?
Well, basically, you can do a couple of things to happen to help the tire wear. But normally, when a circuit like this is so difficult to put the power onto the road through the tires, the setup needs to be really well balanced. And I think once you start seeing a car that is destroying the rear tires, they can do a couple of things: tire pressures, a bit of a robot change inside of the car, and that's all they can do. And with a bit of luck, it will be enough to fix the problem.
Well, Roberto Moreno, we're glad that you had a chance to come join us. We wish you the best for next year, and we hope to see a lot of you. This is interesting, Parker, because Herta's actually come out one lap behind in the position that he was in, just ahead of his teammate Max Pappas, and he's keeping pace with him.
And as a result of that, the previous lap, Paul was a lap quicker than the rest of the group. He was about 6 seconds ahead. But that lap, Paul was a full 2 seconds quicker than Max and the rest of the groups. He's now extended that lead to 9 seconds. So Bryan coming out in front of this group slowed them down. They weren't able to get by, and it was exactly 9.49 seconds. Paul Tracy has taken off.
One of the great stories, and you just see a glimpse of him from time to time. There he is there, this guy, Christian Fittipaldi. Christian Fittipaldi, of course, has been out until this race, suffering injuries right after his victory at Elkhart Lake and a test at the Oval at St. Louis. Now in his comeback, they actually thought, and I think they were right, that he had a very good shot for the pole. He had some very quick times. and then ended up in an off course and was not able to take advantage of a pole run. But he has been very quick here today as he comes forward to line up behind Magnussen in 5th place.
And as you said, he was very quick after Friday afternoon's qualifying. He was 2nd quickest. He had the problem on Saturday afternoon qualifying, dropped him back, but now he's charged back through the field, currently in 5th position.
Tracy, Pappas, Tony Kanaan is right there. There's the move that has been made by Magnussen, starting 9th and up to 4th now.
And he's had some great races the last few. He has started in the back, but passed lots of cars, finishing well in the top 10. Today, it's his best start, and look how he's coming through this traffic. I talked to Kevin Diamond, the Pat Patrick PR person. He said, we don't know how he's going to react without 15 cars to pass in front of him. Well, he's reacting quite well.
The Hogan driver, Helio Castroneves, out of the race, setting up the accident that also took out Juan Montoya. Jan Beekes.
Yes, he's already in the street clothes. What happened?
Well, unfortunately, whole weekend I used in 2nd, and because of the pace was so slow, we have to use 1st, or at least I have to use 1st. And then when I went to the turn 10, I left in 2nd because you get used to it, and the car went straight ahead to the wall.
And next thing was Montoya. He got you from behind?
I mean, I was waiting for someone hit, but the last guy that I want to see was him, and I feel so sorry. I feel so bad. I'm disappointed more because of that. My mistake, and unfortunately this has happened. This is racing, but this time I don't have a smile on my face.
Thank you, Helio.
Of course, the South American contingent in the series are all very close, both on and off the track, and I'm sure that Helio Castroneves is concerned about that incident. Richie Hearn, look at this fine run. Started 15th, currently runs in 8th place. So it's Tracy, Pappas, Kanaan. There's the top of the order, with some of these guys are out of sequence on the pit stop. It's going to be interesting. Sunday Winston Cup action on ESPN from Martinsville Speedway. It's the NASCAR Winston Cup Napa Auto Care 500. Ricky Rudd rode the number 10 Tide Ford to victory in last year's Napa Auto Care 500. For more, log on to ESPN.com, part of the Go Network, go.com. Paul Tracy has pulled out an incredible lead on the streets of Houston, 14 seconds ahead of 2nd place Max Pappas. But Parker, the explanation of Helio Castroneves that set up the accident.
Well, normally you hear on the ovals the drivers will use one gear, a lower gear, or they're in a higher RPM range to help turn the car. They've got more torque, more horsepower to rotate the car through, or a longer gear in order to put some more wear on the front tires. And what Helio's saying here is, not being in 1st gear, he didn't have the ability to pivot the car through the corner. The higher gear didn't allow him to lean on those rear tires and turn it, and simply the front tires wouldn't turn, and he went off into the wall. Usually we hear that on ovals, very rarely on street or road courses.
This battle is back at 13th as Michael Andretti and Dario Franchitti continue to go at it. Franchitti falling back with his pit stop, though the car seems to be handling properly now. Michael Andretti, a new father, his wife Leslie and Michael having a new son just a week and a half ago. The new son is named Luca. I asked Michael today, is it going to be Luca or will it be Luke? He said Luca. And in fact, the baby is here at the track this weekend, so they're going to break him in early. Michael Andretti, Dario Franchitti continue at it, with Michael being the furthermost up car of those who did make stops on that first full course caution. Let's go down to the pits again.
Well, speaking of Michael Andretti, let's take into consideration now Paul Tracy, our leader. They are trying to calculate the distance between Paul Tracy and not 2nd place, but Michael Andretti, because as you say, Paul, he is the leader effectively of those who did pit. They want to figure out if they can bring Paul Tracy onto pit road, do a pit stop, and get him out before Michael Andretti comes around.
29 laps are complete, 100 scheduled. Of those who did not pit, well, the first 12 have not yet pitted. Those who have pitted: Michael Andretti, Mark Blundell, Dario Franchitti, Gil de Ferran, Mauricio Guzman, Mimo Gidley, Al Unser Jr., Brian Herta, and Andrea Montermini.
And as we watch this battle with Pruitt, Michael Andretti, Dario Franchitti, what a difference a year makes. Remember, it was only a year ago when Paul Tracy, at the end of the long back straightaway, threw away his chance for a podium finish, clipping the back of Dario Franchitti. Now Paul has pulled out over a 16-second lead fully in command of this race. Dario struggling now to work his way back into the points positions and stay in the championship hunt.
And referencing back to what Jan Beekes was suggesting, right now, Franchitti, Michael Andretti sits back 35 seconds behind Paul Tracy. Well, Juan Montoya out of the race dejectedly, went to his transporter, which is inside the convention center here in Houston. Finally, though, Gary Gerould caught up with him.
Obviously a tremendous disappointment. You've had a chance to collect your thoughts and your emotions. Can you tell us what happened?
No, just miscommunication. You know, it happened before, it happened again.
Now, what do you say miscommunication? What do you mean?
But, you know, nobody told me it was an incident there. Nobody told me anything. I saw a yellow flag before. I thought maybe when someone went straight or something. But when I saw a yellow flag, they show full course yellow. So he told me just stay out, stay out. He didn't say just watch the car. He didn't say anything. I backed off when he said stay out. Turned around. The car was right in the middle of the racetrack.
Did you have any indication? I mean, how quickly did you suddenly see the car there? Was there any opportunity to take evasive action?
But I tried to, you know, I hit the brakes, try not to lock the tires, to try to get the front around the car, and it didn't.
Now, we've talked so much about the terms of the championship. The opportunity to clinch is now gone. Is that a major disappointment on this day?
But it was major, you know. I didn't know if didn't know either that Dario was running in the back, so that was really disappointing that nobody told me that. Because I was, you know, you can take a different approach, but no, we did what we could do, and that's it.
Now you just look ahead to Australia and try to get the job done there.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Interesting, though, in all of the scenarios that we presented for you, we did tell you that Franchitti would have to be below 7th. Franchitti is now 14th. Had Montoya stayed in, he would have been in the position to capture the championship here.
And you can see the disappointment on Montoya's face. I made some assumptions about communication. Montoya had turned the race's quickest lap at a 61 flat. Tracy now is at 62.2. And at the point that Juan had done that, he was a good half a second quicker than anybody else on the track. Obviously, he could control the race. Castroneves' car was back onto the racing line, and that happened just in front of the pits. It's the last corner onto the pit straight. So you make those assumptions that his team is communicating the advantage he has, that Franchitti is having problems, that there is a car out on the racing line, and apparently he didn't have any of that information. And as a racer, when you see a yellow, you can't slow down unless you know there's a problem. Houston, unlike some of the other street courses we go to, have no line of sight through these corners. The asphalt is right up against the racing line. They haven't pulled them back at the apexes, so he had no warning until after you turn the wheel, and there the car popped out too late. There was no place for him to go. I would be disappointed as well.
We've been looking at the battle back from about 7th, which is Greg Moore. Greg Moore is the 99 Players car there in front, followed by Richie Hearn in the Budweiser car, then Carpentier, Vassar, D'Amata. Now, you'll notice on the top of, say, Richie Hearn's car, this onboard camera is mounted in a small aerodynamic pod on top of the rollover bar. And a couple of races ago at Vancouver, we were pointing out that Paul Tracy had such a pod on his car, despite the fact that he had no onboard camera. And we made a lot of what that may be, and I made some remarks that it might be aerodynamic, which, of course, on a street course, it had not. It was tongue-in-cheek. But on this track, we can show you and tell you the reason, and many cars are carrying the pod without a camera. It's because if you are pit side, the structure of the walls on this particular circuit are such that if you're the pit crew, you cannot see the car come down the straightaway. The only way they know when their car is going by is if they have a camera pod up on top of the roll bar and they see that little pod goes flying down the straightaway.
Visibility difficult not only for the drivers but also for the crews. And Houston is also unique, Paul, in that 9 of the 10 corners are 90-degree left-handers, all about 60 miles an hour. The drivers shift 22 times a lap. You multiply that by 100. They've got 2,200 shifts they have to accomplish. It's extremely bumpy. Lots of manhole covers, which means the drivers are weaving, trying to find the smoothest place so they can run these cars as low as possible. Very hard on the brakes. We can see someone's trying to look down the inside back there.
Now, Paul Tracy now begins to engage traffic. That's Al Unser Jr., who started this race with his worst qualifying ever, last place. And then lined up in front of Al, he's got Hattori, and he's going to begin engaging quite a few cars. Al Unser Jr. comes out to try to get Hattori, and and Tracy's able to get under both of them while Ellinger Jr. makes his pass and now tries to pursue Tracy. Jan Beekes.
Well, you're talking about the height of the wall, Paul. Well, it not only affects the vision on the car, but every one of these fuel tanks this weekend is 4 inches higher off the ground than it has been all year, and that's just because the height of the pavement here on pit road. The end result is that our pit stops today will be a little bit faster because the fuel is gravity fed.
That affects the crews. It doesn't affect the spectators, though. The temporary grandstands here are set well back from the course and plenty high up with a great view. It's very hot, though, in those grandstands today. This is the 7th race that Paul Tracy has led this year. 4 on road courses, 3 on ovals. We'll be back. Grand Prix of Houston, Paul Page with Parker Johnstone, pit side Gary Gerould and Jan Beekes. Paul Tracy is still the leader by 16 seconds over second place Max Pappas. Jimmy Vasser had kind of a thrilling ride just a moment ago. Take a look at him, 4th back in this line.
He locks up the rear tires, slides wide, and that allows an opportunity for D'Amata, Andretti, and also Franchitti significantly, who's now in 11th in the points.
Drop Vasser from 10th back to 13th.
Wow!
Oh.
Jimmy going into back of Blundell there, Paul.
Yeah, Blundell had gotten past Pruitt to get up in the competition with Jimmy Vasser. There's Blundell behind. He's fallen back some now.
That was quite the punt.
D'Amata makes his move to the inside. Boy, they've been working this corner hard, and I'm surprised they're doing it because you can see a buildup of rubber all around the course now.
Now you can see the marbles are getting deeper and deeper. Some of these shots, you can actually see the rubber flying off the tires. And Paul, with 38 laps on these tires now, these guys are hanging on. These tires are done. Pit stop should come in the next 6 laps now or about. We should see the first of these cars in, but they are really hanging on.
Yeah, I'm thinking those are going to be a very long 6 laps. Franchitti behind D'Amata. The battle is at 9th. Behind Franchitti is Michael Andretti. Greg Moore from 7th back to 12th in just 2 laps. Of course, he was in there with part of that action as well, as was his teammate Patrick Carpentier.
There you can see the marbles offline. Look how deep they're getting. And you can see now, instead of running down the wall, Paul, they're just trying to find the clear path about a full car lane out from that wall, because if you run in those marbles with hot tires, it just glues itself to the tires, and then it's like driving in a skating rink.
Let's take you up toward the front. Max Pappas runs in 2nd. Behind Paul Tracy by 20 full seconds now. But look at the line behind him. Kanaan, Magnussen, Fittipaldi, Fernandez, they're all there.
Pit stops will play a very interesting strategy in this group. We've just learned that Magnussen will be coming in 3 laps.
Paul Tracy 20 seconds in front. Jan Beekes, when does he come in?
Well, they're still discussing on the exact lap he's going to come in, but I can tell you that they told him a few moments on the radio. We see that Greg Moore is on pit road, but they don't expect Paul Tracy right away. They told him to ignore the water alarm. In other words, the dash goes off and says that the car is overheating. They radioed to him and said, don't worry about it. We think it's a false alarm. Ignore it.
Greg Moore was in 16th when he came into the pits. Battle continues with Max Pappas leading that group. His best finish was 3rd just 2 weeks ago at Laguna Seca. He started 5th. He's now 2nd.
And the strategy in this group, Paul, is you might throw away the chance of staying out and trying to catch a yellow to pit early, get a break so you're not coming in with this group, depend on your crew for a great pit stop, and then get back out, hopefully in a clear section of racetrack. So you might, for Kanaan, for Magnussen, for Christian Fittipaldi, for Adrian, you might want to take that chance and just try to break off a little bit early.
You saw Adrian Fernandez as he came around the corner was just as Greg Moore came out of the pit exit. They actually have to go down off of the pits, take a left on Rusk Street, and then wind back and forth and finally come out beyond the 2nd turn. And so Adrian lost some time when he had to avoid Greg Moore, who was coming out, of course, a bit slower than they were coming off of the corner. The pit's somewhat unique here, not only with the exit that I've just described, but with the entrance where they come down before the last corner, drive straight off, take a left, and into the pits. Well, Jan, you've been telling us about pit strategy and the strategy of the race all day. What are they looking at now?
Well, Paul, it relates to what you were just talking about, and that is the pit exit. Because it is so circuitous to work your way back onto the racetrack, they don't know the exact time that it takes to get back out on the racetrack. And for Greg Moore, you could see that it backfired. He pitted early, and he got out of the pits and had like 5 or 6 cars right in front of him. It's difficult for the teams to figure out where they will come out if they pit now.
And as you were talking about, Paul, the pit in is such that the guys just extend turning in late for the last corner that leads onto the pit straightaway. The very first pit is Richie Hearn's pit, and during practice this morning I was watching the drivers use up every inch of road and just clip the corner box of Richie Hearn's pits. And if they do that now during the race, they will be penalized. There is a short stretch where they can accelerate. These guys have to be very careful not to exceed that 50-mile-an-hour speed limit, but it looks like if any passing is going to be done in this tight group, it's going to be up to their crews during this first pit stop.
On board Christian Fittipaldi. Good to see him back. That was a car just making its turn off.
Yeah, Jan Magnussen peeled off there.
Down right in front of the convention center here are the pits. In fact, the teams actually have some overhead coverage from the canopies of these pits.
Look at the brake dust pour out of those wheels, Paul. This is talking to the teams. They have put more heat into their brakes than any other track that they've run on. They're running enormous brake ducting here. And this is a great run for Jan Magnussen. Came in 4th place. Once the pit stops have all been done, we'll see where he's come back out in the mix.
Magnussen makes the stop on the 42nd lap. Back to the battle, seconds and beyond. Pappas, Kanaan, Fittipaldi, Fernandez. Now they do search for some different lines, despite the fact that it's fairly slick offline in most of the course, but looking through here you seem okay.
Well, the problem they've got here is, bumpy as this track is, the premium on brakes and tires, you can't give away an inch trying to move offline. As we said, it's hot. If you trail cars like this, it'll drive your water and oil temperature up through the roof because you're getting the heated air of the car in front of you now passing through the radiators. And it just makes for a very long, tough day. And there's no place to rest here, Paul. It's just constant acceleration, braking, shifting. Even trying to talk on the radio sometimes is very, very difficult for the drivers. And as we've said before, it is very bumpy here.
Next time around, we expect Max Pappas into the pits. It'll be on the 44th lap. And the best guess would be that most of those behind him will stop then, or perhaps on the next lap. Fittipaldi makes a try inside Tony Kanaan and gets him under braking. Now remember, of those that stopped earlier, Michael Andretti, who currently runs in 11th, is the lead of the group that stopped early. Well, Kanaan's had to give way now twice, as there goes Fernandez, and he's passed him. So Fernandez moves forward. All of this coming right ahead of when they're all supposed to stop.
A very clean move by Christian Fittipaldi. Yeah, that was a bit of a forced move there by Adrian, but what happened is when Tony went a little wide to allow Christian down the inside, he got off into the marbles. You pick that up on the tires. It won't corner or stop as well. Adrian Fernandez took advantage of that since Adrian was able to stay online and force the pass going into the next corner.
Dario Franchitti just got around Andretti. Franchitti, remember, had stopped earlier. Richie Hearn from 7th into the pits, Jan.
Yes, and he has the very first pit, so it's very easy for him to get in there. The fuel's in, and for that, boy, it was 11.85 on my watch. Great stop for Richie Hearn and company.
Richie Hearn's Budweiser car, Toyota Power.
They've had a great race weekend.
Yeah, good weekend. They've really been pleased with it. Here's the leader, Paul Tracy. Due in this lap, next lap, certainly sometime soon.
This team, led by Chief Mechanic Tony Cobbin, has been one of the most consistently quick pit stop crews in the CART FedEx Championship Series.
Magnussen came out 1 lap behind the lead. The leader got him around. Max Pappas is due in. What about Paul Tracy, Jan?
Well, I can tell you that they were going to wait a few laps, but they decided they might be in here soon because Paul says the rear tires are going away. Gary?
We are with the crew at the end of pit road here for Max Pappas. This will be their first chance to spring into action. Jimmy Prescott, the veteran, on the left front. Perfect stop by Max. We don't anticipate changes. They may not necessarily have to get a full load of fuel because they've gone now to about the 45th lap. Tires are done quickly. They're waiting. That's an 11.1 stop, Jan.
Now we have confirmation on Paul Tracy. They're showing him the pit board, pit 2. So 2 laps to go for Paul Tracy. Now sometimes they go pit 2, pit 1, and then pit. So it could mean 3, depending on how you work the pit board.
Adrian Fernandez also came in on the 46th lap and made a routine stop there. There's Magnussen, but remember, he's 1 lap behind. There comes Fernandez out of that somewhat difficult pit exit road that they use here on the streets of Houston. And here is Paul Tracy working on Pappas.
Now look, he's out of the marbles here. He's got to be very careful. This is a risk he may not want to take, and it might be time to come in early if he's going to be caught up in traffic.
Now, in fact, he did not take it, as you watch Tony Kanaan coming from 3rd place into the pits. He's all the way down the pits, Gary.
Tony Kanaan, who is in the pit adjacent to Pappas. Tremendous amount of brake dust coming off as they change. We watch the time. Everything appears to be routine, waiting for fuel. No changes on the handling. Terrific stop once again by Steve Horn and the Forsythe team.
And there is that left turn that they make, and then they wiggle back to the right before they join the race course. You see the concentration, the focus in Tony Kanaan's eyes.
And during times, the drivers are equally as busy during the stops as they are driving, because they're taking the tear-offs off, so they've got a clean visor. You can see Tony get a drink. They're also moving sway bars. They're readjusting the brake bias and also resetting the fuel counter, all that occurring in just at 11 seconds.
Max Pappas just ahead of Paul Tracy, runs in 11th place, just behind Tracy. There's Mark Blundell as he pulls off the edge of the course. Boy, look at that. Blundell pulls over and everybody takes advantage to fight it out. Pappas, Tracy right behind him. Whoa. Now they're telling us that Adrian Fernandez and Max Pappas will both be black flagged for pit speed violation.
And we talked before this first round of stops with the pressure on the crews, the pressure on drivers, how critical it was not to take that chance, and yet it's happened again. Here comes Max Pappas in.
Mark Blundell climbs out of the car at the edge of the race course. That would seem to be almost certainly a full course caution. It would come in a good advantage to Tracy. Jan?
And again, lots of brake dust coming off. They do not expect to make any changes for Paul Tracy. They just want this to go routine. They take it off the jacks so the fuel will flow faster. That's all you do. 8.2, a little slower than we saw for Richie Hearn, but they waited for every ounce of fuel. You wonder if they caught a yellow flag, could they go to the end?
Boy, that's a bit of a reach, but I'm not sure. Gary Gerald, what was Max Pappas doing?
Well, it was one of those speed violations. And Paul, in the very first session this weekend on Friday, in 90 minutes, there were well over a dozen pit speed violations, and they continued all weekend long as teams flirted with that 50-mile-per-hour limit. Pappas, we are told, was told 3 times on the radio to watch his speed, and yet somehow that rev limiter, I don't know if it didn't work or what, but he exceeded the limit. He just paid the price with a drive-through penalty. That puts him way back.
And look at how the pit stops work for him. Tracy comes out right with his teammate Dario Franchitti. Franchitti lines up right behind him in 2nd place.
But this means...
Whoa, 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 be careful.
Almost a reversal of last year, this time with Tracy leading. Paul came in with a 30.5-second lead. I think that Franchitti must not have pitted yet if they're both out here. Now, keep in mind, Paul's on full tanks, cold tires. Oh, that's right. Franchitti did pit early. Thanks, Paul, for that reminder. Paul's looking at me, shaking at his head. So now this was the battle for the lead. Franchitti a little bit lighter, Paul on cold tires.
So Franchitti takes over the lead. Out of sequence on the stops, followed by Tracy. Michael Andretti is now 3rd. Franchitti, remember, stopped on the 13th lap. We'll be back after this message and a word from our ABC stations.
Yellow. Again, they wait for the fuel. Boy, that was quick. They didn't wait for all the fuel. Not like Paul Tracy. When the tires were done, he was out of here. Gary?
And Michael Andretti also in. Gets a cool refreshment, throws the bottle over the wall. The tires have been changed. They wave him out of here in 11.5 seconds.
The refueling on Tracy. What's the game?
Well, if you figure they came in at the lap they did, if they get another couple of yellows, he might be able to make it to the end. That's the only thing I can guess at this point. If they're short fueling both Franchitti and Andretti, that means that they plan on another stop.
That's Andrea Montermini and Dan Gurney's Eagle Has lost power, stopped on the edge of the course, but we are already under the full course caution. So with the full course caution for Jimmy Vasser, the leader comes in and refuels, though it was a light refuel. We'll be back. Still under the full course caution as you look down on the streets of downtown Houston from the Honda Helicam. Nothing has happened on the race course since that flurry of stops under the full course. Tonight, the winner of 4 Emmys, including Best Drama 2 years in a row, The Practice season premiere. ABC tonight, 9 Central. Now, a couple updates. We start with Jan.
Well, let's talk about those pit stops, Paul, because we said that Dario Franchitti made such a quick stop. He must have taken less fuel than his teammate Paul Tracy. But we have to remember that he had pitted originally on lap number 13. His car was not empty. So I ran over here and looked at the Ventos, and it turns out there was some methanol fuel in the Ventos, which is the clue, meaning that, in fact, they got a full load of fuel for Dario Franchitti. I would assume that's the same situation for Michael Andretti. The tank not being empty, they can do a quicker pit stop and get out faster than Paul Tracy. That was his very first pit stop. Gary?
Well, a different type of a problem for Greg Moore, who's had a frustrating weekend to say the least. Apparently some type of an electronic problem or something that related to the throttle forced him to take an extra pit stop. The crew's not sure exactly what that problem was. They think now that they've got it back and responding the way it should. Greg is back on track, but he had to make an extra visit here to the pits. As a consequence, he slipped way back in the standings.
Taking advantage of this full course caution, CART officials have sent out a sweeper to get some of that rubber off of the race course. They still circulate behind the pace car. Driver of that pace car is Linda Pope. She's the first woman ever to win an IMSA Endurance Championship in the touring division, and she leads the field around. Now the double yellows are being displayed at all the corner stations around this course. Under the yellow, Paul Tracy leads. Look at this. This is Mark Blundell. He was out at the Manned Spacecraft Center at NASA along with a large group. They really treated us well. We had a great time. We're expecting them to come back to green, though Patrick Carpentier just had a problem while we're still under the full course caution. This is the only thing that has happened since we've been away. Something to consider, though. Carpentier was in 9th. Tracy went 48 laps plus the pace laps. Now, Michael Andretti, Dario Franchitti, and the group that's out of sequence only have 48 to go at the time of their stop to the checkered flag. And very possible they have lined up in a good position. Franchitti, the leader of that group, is sitting back there in 4th place. Back to green. We're racing again. Tracy is the leader. Christian Fittipaldi, there he is actually scored his 2nd place. Al Unser Jr. well off the pace. Adrian Fernandez, Al Unser Jr. sitting at 16th. Fernandez is at 17th. 2nd in that line. Whoa, here comes Hattori without a nose. There's the nose. Flags come out. Also, the debris flag, yellow flag, red stripes. The Walker Racing nose from Naoki Hattori's car. They should be able to run out and get that. It's very light without going anything but local yellow. Look at the right rear, though.
And considering that all these corners are blind, I don't know, Paul, it could be very, very hazardous for someone to run out there, and the drivers may not be able to see it. Well, watch as he rounds this corner now. There he is. There's the nose, and then he gets in with the right rear as well. You can see him just push that nose back out onto the racing line. Look at Jimmy Vasser trying to figure out what's going to go wrong next today.
A little early apex for Naoki Hattori. Vasser makes it out, clears the nose. Hattori is trying to make it back to the pits, get a right rear and a new nose. Shouldn't take all that long. Back to the front. Paul Tracy again gets a good start. Pulls away 2.8 seconds over Christian Fittipaldi. But Christian has Al Unser Jr. and Adrian Fernandez to deal with before he can get back. Well, now he's dealt with the first of those. And we go full course caution again. So it'll bunch up again. The pits will open again. Parker, I'm thinking if I'm Tracy, I may want to look at the pits pretty seriously right now.
Well, it's really going to become a fuel game, isn't it?
Yeah, so think of that as a strategy. You have 58 complete, 42 to go. You know you can make 48. you're going to lose a little track position, but isn't it worth it to get in on this full course? Jan Beekes?
Well, I asked Barry Green that just before the last restart. I said, would you consider coming in to get fuel to be sure you had enough to the end? He said, no. He said, your strategy when you're leading is not the same when you're back in the pack. We cannot take that kind of risk. I would assume what they'll do, Paul, is they will try when they get a lot of green flag running to make enough distance to pull out, to come in to make a quick pit stop and still try and hang on to the lead. Kind of like what Gilles de Ferran did in Portland.
Well, and it paid off for Gilles de Ferran in Portland, and Paul Tracy is certainly capable of doing it. Richie Hearn is in. You saw Jan Magnussen is in as well, taking advantage again of the full course caution. So going to be kind of neat to see how this all plays out. Tracy's job now will be, as soon as they go green, to rocket away from the field and try to put enough time on the rest of the field so that he can be able to stop without a problem. We'll be back after this message and a word from your ABC stations. Full course caution as the green flag comes out. Al Unser Jr. tucked right in behind Paul Tracy. Despite the fact he's 15th and a lap behind the lead, he didn't want to get caught out. Look at Dario Franchitti as he comes, makes a quick move inside of third place Tony Kanaan and passes him. But for Christian Fittipaldi, currently second, he will have to get around to Adrian Fernandez, and Al Unser Jr. sitting just ahead of him.
And that's going to be very, very difficult. Adrian's been very quick all weekend long. And now Christian has got Dario Franchitti. He's so good on these restarts. And you can see Christian checking his left mirror, his right mirror, the left mirror, trying to figure out which way Dario's going to come. You can just see his tires. Well, he didn't pop out that time, but he's trying to set him up here.
Kanaan comes a little to the right, searches for a different line. The cleaning of the course looks like it's done some good.
Well, it'll certainly help these passing opportunities, especially on the early stages of these restarts.
It is very, very hot here today. Patrick Carpentier came into the pits. They actually had to bleed brakes. Hot, humid, or as they say here, typical Houston summer day.
As I mentioned before, the team said they've seen brake temperatures higher than they've seen anywhere at any time, almost 200 degrees Celsius hotter than any other place. We weren't so concerned about the brakes staying consistent, although that obviously has become a problem with Carpentier, but rather brake wear. They said Chicago, they had tremendous brake wear. Some of the cars were down to the metal backing plates at the end of the race, and they thought that might be a problem here as well.
Parker, we saw with Carpentier making an extra pit stop, they actually were bleeding the brakes, restoring the supply of brake fluid before sending him back out. That just follows up exactly what you're talking about, and we've seen in almost every stop the brake dust that we saw and were amazed at Chicago. It has been really hard on the binders.
And Gary, when I visited some of the teams yesterday after qualifying, they typically put heat-sensitive paint on the brake rotors, and by how that paint flashes, they can then adjust their braking systems. Well, all the cars I looked at, all the paint had flashed. They didn't have any higher temperature paint to try to gauge exactly how hot those braking systems were operating.
And we're talking about temperatures, what, up like 1,200 degrees Celsius or something like that?
That's exactly right.
Well, yeah, Parker, you came running to me after the first practice session to point out that I think it was on Castroneves' car that the paint indicating brake temperatures were just gone.
Absolutely.
Tracy, then Fittipaldi, 4 seconds back, still separated by Al Unser Jr. and Adrian Fernandez. Top 14 cars all the way back to Richie Hearn, still on the leader lap. Al Unser Jr. is 15th. If Tracy needs to pull out to try to build enough time to make a pit stop and come back to the lead, or at least come back to the front, he's not doing it. He has a 4-second lead over second place Fittipaldi. Jan?
Well, I can tell you that they say that they are playing the fuel game. At least Barry Green, talking to Paul Tracy on the radio, says we're playing the fuel game. Let's get 2.2. Now, what that would mean is you're not going out like a rabbit to make a pit stop. You're saving fuel, so maybe you don't have to make one.
Well, the reverse of the whole concept that we suggested to you, but seems to me to be a pretty dangerous pull. Franchitti's sitting back there in third place. We know he's going to the end, but they're both in the same team, so they know what each other's doing.
Well, I wonder if they do sometimes, Paul. And right now, Tracy's got the perfect opportunity if he is going to pull away, because he's got the lap cars of Al Unser Jr. And right now, a car that's farther. Well, he's also a lap down of Adrian Fernandez behind him, which is exactly what you would want if you were in Paul Tracy's situation.
You saw the projected laps left in Paul Tracy's fuel tank. We're on the 64th lap. Number came up as 32. 96th lap of 100. Now, the other question becomes, it's very close on being a timed race. 2-hour potential time limit, as exists on all kart races. That's counting at 41 minutes and 24 seconds. They don't announce that as a time race until about 10 laps to go.
So right now, I would think everything is in Paul Tracy's court. He's got all the advantages he needs now. And if they pick up at least one more yellow, remember, that's what got him the race win earlier this year in Milwaukee, he would be absolutely golden. So right now, depending on whether we believe the strategy that's being announced by the team, either he's got to go out, try to gain the lead. It's now up to 5.7 seconds. Come in for a splash and go, or maybe hope for that yellow. Or maybe he's getting great mileage and his car's just this good and he can extend the lead easily.
Paul Tracy's gaining a little time now. He gained a second on that last lap, Jan.
Well, they are still telling him to save as much fuel as possible. Before, when I said we need 2.2, of course, that's 2.2 miles per gallon. They're given enough fuel. The allocation is 1.85. That gives you an indication the kind of fuel economy they want to get. Now, of course, I think they're still banking on yellow. I'm not sure that without a yellow, 2.2 would get you all the way to the end. But again, it's that whole time race factor.
And as Paul Tracy continues to pull away, Al Unser Jr. and this car, Adrian Fernandez, are a lap behind the lead. Now, there's been a lot of discussion between the officials and the drivers about how they will handle a car that is a lap down and how they will order that car to move over. That's been a real controversy among them.
And this is exactly the situation that they're addressing, because right now Christian Fittipaldi might have a faster car. He just can't utilize it to get past these two lapped cars in front of him. And that applies to the rest of the field behind him. Also Kanaan, Andretti, D'Amato, the rest of the group. So will they tell Unser Jr. and Fernandez to yield? They're not going to get this lap back under normal situations, which you might expect on a short oval. Do they ask them to move over and allow this race to then play out with Fittipaldi and the rest of the group?
Well, now Al Unser Jr. has been given flags, the black along with the passing flag, and that is a direct order to move over and let those cars behind you come by. Of course, Adrian Fernandez, right behind him, is probably, in theory, also receiving that flag, because Al Unser Jr. is trying to hold off Adrian Fernandez for position. Now, if they don't move over, then they'll call those guys in. So it's a new rule that they worked out in concert with the drivers, and the drivers did agree. Now they have also notified Al Unser's team. I'm again making an assumption they've done the same thing for Adrian Fernandez, since they are both in the same position. Well, Paul Tracy's still the leader. He's pulled out 6.5 seconds over Christian Fittipaldi. We'll be back. Jimmy Vasser had a bit of a problem, ran off the end of one of the corners, and difficult to get back on as deep as he went.
You can see the rear brakes locking again. It's the same braking problem he's had the entire race, and he went way down in these tires, and he's still trying to get reverse from back there.
Jimmy Vasser finally did, in fact, get it back on the course. 2 laps behind the lead, currently runs 20th. Well, there is that quandary up at the front of the field. Adrian Fernandez and Al Unser Jr., who are battling for 15th place. And finally, Al Jr., whether he let them by or accepted an order to have them go by would be the question. But they only gave him the blue passing flag, which is advisory.
And the problem we had with this, Paul, is that Fernandez and Al Jr. were actually pulling away from Christian Fittipaldi and the rest of the group. So it's a big problem for the driver. You're getting a blue flag. You're being warned. You look in your mirror. The driver's not close enough behind you to just let them by. And you're probably yelling back to your team saying, hey, if they get close, I'll let them by. But I'm just not going to pull over and stop. Well, looks like Al Unser Jr. has finally done that.
Yeah, and Gil de Ferran got around Al Unser Jr. That is a pass for position as well. He took advantage of all that traffic ahead of him and moved around little Al and into 16th.
And we should mention that Al Unser Jr. out of the Lola, back in the Penske chassis for this weekend.
So to reset the situation that we have here at the front, Adrian Fernandez, you see him there. He is 15. He was in that battle with Al Unser Jr. Behind him, Christian Fittipaldi, the 11 Kmart car. And behind that, there is Dario Franchitti, the 27 car. They are chasing the leader, Paul Tracy. Paul Tracy is well out in front of the field, playing the fuel economy game, trying to see if he can get his car well down the road. At the same time, because these two cars are out of sequence, how it'll come down to the end of the game is going to be very interesting.
It surely will be. Because remember that these two cars stopped different sequences. We had Franchitti come in on lap 13, then he was able to top off. This will be very, very interesting. We've seen Dario before get great mileage in situations like this while being able to drive extremely fast, get the most out of the lap time of the car.
Christian Fittipaldi with Franchitti making
not on
the move.
The outside.
Oh, careful. Franchitti can't get it done. Christian Fittipaldi continues in second. Gary.
And Paul, as we watch that ongoing battle, the word to Christian Fittipaldi, he's going to have to do a little bit better in terms of fuel conservation. He was just told a moment ago that they've got to get 2.2 miles per gallon. Parker, you've been doing the math on some of those numbers, and I know when you got a guy right on your rear wing filling your mirrors, it's tough to think about conserving fuel.
Well, it really is, and the difference between 1.85 and 2.2 miles per gallon is nearly 8 laps. Horsepower-wise, it probably takes it from 900 down to the low 700s figure. So Christian Fittipaldi hanging on here, obviously braking as deep as he can, taking that car through the corners just as hard as he can, but going down the straightaway. That's why we're watching Dario able to get a run at the end of the long back straight, and Dario Franchitti even trying to go around the outside that last lap, something I've never seen anybody try to do here at Houston. Let's see if he can draft up and try it again. It looks like, no, it's not going to be able to do it. Remember, part of the game here is getting off the corners well to use that top speed.
Robbie Gordon on the pit road. He dropped from 8th to 14th in a single lap, so something seriously wrong.
Make sure you tell him it was an electrical problem. That's the reason we're out.
Jan Beekes, you handle that one.
Well, what happened was the engine, as he was going down the front straightaway, sounded horrible. And you heard the discussion, so we know what the answer will be.
Yeah, well, Paul, I think that one's electrical, that when a piece from the engine went through the wiring loom, it probably shut it off.
Yeah, so I guess I need to explain that. Because of the sensitivities with all the manufacturers, often when a component fails that is a high-profile component, then maybe they come up with a low-profile component as the cause, just so that they don't end up with embarrassment. And I'm only speculating that may have happened there.
Well, but keep in mind that whether it's Honda, Ford, Toyota, or Mercedes, all these engines are stressed to their absolute limit. And that's what racing's all about, is trying to get the most out of the technology. And so things do go wrong because they're on the ragged edge all the time. And this time it just happened to be Robbie's turn.
Scott Pruitt comes on the inside. Grabs a spot away from Moore. Gary Gerould.
Robbie Gordon, we heard them talking about, be sure you remind him it's an electrical problem. Was that in fact the case?
It's definitely an electrical problem. Very unfortunate. You know, the Toyota was running really good today. Team did a good job in the pit stops. Climbed from 22nd up to 8th, and I'm fighting a pretty bad cold. We just thought we were going to be able to get a top 5 finish today, and it's unfortunate. The guys over here are doing a really good job, working hard. The Eagle's starting to come alive. We're learning a lot about it. Can't wait till the next race.
Thanks, Robbie.
Thank you.
So welcome to our version of You Make the Call. Scott Pruitt is trying to get around Al Unser Jr. He does it. Now Max Pappas lines up. You will notice, too, look at the front wing on Al Unser Jr.'s car. Yep, that is the Penske rather than the Lola. They came back to it. But little Al now has most of the leadership lined up behind him, trying to get around. Max Pappas is currently running in 8th place, and Max looks to the inside.
Great run by Scott Pruitt. He had such a great race at our last event back at Laguna Seca, running very strong. Just ahead of him, Cristiano D'Amato running in 6th place, also having a great run for this Cal Wells PPI team.
So Paul Tracy at the front, followed by Christian. Paul Tracy is almost 7.5 seconds ahead. And Christian still has Dario Franchitti right behind him, just about 4/10 back. just a couple of seconds ago, Adrian Fernandez, remember, he was trying to get back onto the lead lap, and he finally was able to get it done. He was battling with Al Unser Jr. for position, currently runs 14th. And Fernandez with a weak right wrist that he broke in practice for the race in Detroit. Big scar down the side of his wrist from where they did the surgery. Gets his lap back. Let's go down once again to Jan Beekes.
Well, the discussion with Paul Tracy and Barry Green, his team owner, was do not fight with lap traffic. Let them go. It's too important for us to save fuel at the moment. That's why he let Fernandez go.
Adrian Fernandez, as you said, Paul, came back at Laguna Seca. We were concerned about the G-force and his strength taking a toll on that right wrist. But here at Houston, he's got a different problem. Lower G's, but tremendous pounding. Lots of bumps combined with the shifting. Big drainage ditches around the inside, which really take a toll on the equipment and the driver. He's been one of the fastest cars all day long, but those 2 pit speed violations cost him.
Paul Tracy remains the leader with 23 laps to go and a 7-second lead over second place. Christian Fittipaldi and Dario Franchitti. But the real key is going to be the fuel and the pit stops. Steve Young leads the San Francisco against the Arizona Cardinals. The 30th anniversary season of Monday Night Football continues live at 9 Eastern, 6 Pacific on ABC Sports. Well, since we've been away, Paul Tracy's pulled out a 9-second lead. Jimmy Vasser came into the pits, and nothing else really has changed. The focus and the question remains Christian Fittipaldi, Dario Franchitti, and how they relate on the course to Paul Tracy, the current leader. There's the race recap at this point with 4 full course cautions, and those have really been what enters into the play. Now, this is only our calculation. We don't have the special information from the telemetry and all those computers that exist in the back of the pits of each of these teams. But our guess is lap 96, lap 98, somewhere in there, leader Paul Tracy is going to have to come into the pits. For Christian Fittipaldi and Dario Franchitti, we assume they can go the checkered flag.
We're not sure, but what we do know for sure is that the last few laps, Dario Franchitti had really started to push Christian Fittipaldi, even trying completely different lines. The drivers I've talked to say that if you lead on this thing 1 or 2 laps, the tires go away. Is Dario pushing too hard too soon? Because looking a little farther back, Tony Kanaan and Michael Andretti have been a little bit more conservative. I think, Paul, that they're trying to wait to see how this fuel strategy plays out, save their tires, save their brakes a little bit, and maybe push, not now, but with 10 laps to go or even 5 laps to go.
So you got Tracy, Fittipaldi, similar problems. Franchitti, well, he might be able to do it. We're going to see how this all plays out. We mentioned Jimmy Vasser came into the pits. He then climbed out of the car and now is with Gary.
Paul, rare is the day when both of the Ganassi cars are sidelined and not able to finish. Jimmy Vasser, you've had more than a handful this weekend. What ends up being the ultimate problem?
Well, the biggest problem was the brakes and swing.
Excuse me for interrupting. Fittipaldi, Franchitti just got together. Both continue on. Go back ahead, Gary.
All right, we'll get back to Jimmy.
Yeah, watching the race, you would have saw me go off many times in the braking zone. I was out of bounds more times than I play golf, so, you know, it's a rarity for me, and, you know, it's a shame for both target cars to be out, and, you know, we just had big braking problems all weekend. I can't figure it out. I was locking them up rears, fronts, and it's just a shame. The car actually handled pretty good when I wasn't locked up all the brakes going off the track.
All right, thanks, Jim.
Thank you.
Michael Andretti around Tony Kanaan, but what about the condition of both Christian Fittipaldi and Dario Franchitti? Here it is, Parker.
Remember the last 2 races, both in Vancouver and Laguna. Dario's tried to force passes, and it hasn't worked. Watch him try the outside, looking down the inside. Now watch the parts fly as, oh man, look at that as he turns in. You can see one of the kick-ups on the left rear off the pod come off the back of Dario's car. Let's have a look from the in-car camera and see what it looks like. Oh, man, you could see Christian just rolled out wide, turned back in. This isn't unlike what we saw between Fittipaldi and Paul Tracy at Detroit year before last, where he swung wide. Paul thought there was an opening, dove down to the inside. Christian came back for the apex, and guess what? There was a green car there.
Nope, Franchitti now second, 9 seconds back from his teammate Paul Tracy. The question is, how does that change the performance on this race car?
Well, you can see if we get a good shot right here, he is missing this kick up that's on the other side of the car. And what that does is it affects total downforce, but especially downforce to the back of the car, which is critical on these cars because you can always put more front end, but you always try to run as much downforce in the back as you can possibly get on the street course.
So that's a little winglet ahead of the left rear. We also saw some white paint, maybe even fiber kick up in the air from the front. But as yet, I haven't found where that might have come from. It might just be the scrape of the wall.
Now, the saving grace here is keep in mind that all but one of these corners is in about the 60 to 65 mile an hour speed range, which is really the very bottom limit of where the aerodynamics start to take an effect. Everything else are short or long straightaways. Of all places, this is probably the one place where Dario Franchitti might get away without the aerodynamic advantage that he would need at one of the other street or road courses.
Speaking of the aerodynamic advantage, with 16 to go now, the Kart Competition Board got together this weekend, and they have decided to create what in fact is another Hanford device. They call it the Hanford Mark II, and they will use it on assorted tracks, including the short ovals. They hope it will bring the field a little closer together.
Watching this onboard, look how loose Michael Andretti's car is. You'll see him roll in and they make corrections coming off the corners. Now, he didn't do it through the last two corners onto the pit straightaway. You can see he is really fighting this car, really working. This is just typical Michael Andretti. There you see it right there, that when it comes race time, this guy is a tiger.
Michael Andretti took Tony Kanaan, moved to fourth. Michael's only 11 seconds back from the leader, right behind his teammate, Christian Fittipaldi, who's having, for a guy making his comeback race, a very nice run here today. Franchitti, second place. What about him, Jan Bikus? They know anything about the damage?
Well, they saw the same thing we did. They appreciated the replays, and they think the car is going to be okay, even though it's missing a few bits. Now, I asked, how much downforce do those bits give you? Don Halliday said about 150 pounds of downforce. So as long as a radiator or a brake duct or something like that is not damaged, we should be okay, just a little lighter on downforce.
Well, there's part of the key, is whether or not it affects the cooling on this very hot day on the streets of Houston, Texas. Well, Cristiano Damata's fading just a little bit. Pappas and Pruitt got around Damata for 6th and 7th. There's the debris on the racetrack, part of the winglet there, that rides just ahead of the left rear. Hopefully it will not impact them hard. College football team goes to work to bring you 4 great college football regional games, including number 17 Wisconsin and number 10 Ohio State. You need to check the local listings for the game in your area. It's all on ABC Sports. Well, 88 laps complete, 12 to go, closing laps. The game still being played here. Franchitti, and it appears that he's running just fine. He's still losing a little bit of time to the leader, Paul Tracy, his teammate. Christian Fittipaldi is now lined up about 4 seconds behind Franchitti. There's the interval, first to second. And then you'll have to look back. That's the 10. And another 4 to Christian Fittipaldi. But Christian has his teammate, Michael Andretti, in 4th place, right behind him.
Keep in mind that Christian Fittipaldi, his first race back, very difficult circuit with these bumps, with the humidity, the heat. Christian Fittipaldi, though, in fantastic physical condition, has driven very well all weekend long. Michael Andretti obviously wants to get around his teammate if he can, but I don't think he'll risk contact in order to get it done.
While we were away, Scott Pruitt pitted. He was 7th. And the question, of course, is can Paul Tracy make it these 11 laps to the finish? Pretty sure that Franchitti can. We're not so sure about Christian Fittipaldi. Michael, we assume, can.
Well, I would think, Paul, the way Tracy has been driving, he hasn't been pushing extremely hard. He's been giving himself a little bit of room in the braking areas, on the apexes and on the exits. And I would think now that he's got enough fuel, he's just built this cushion. He's driven a flawless race. The new Paul Tracy we've seen so many times this year, being very patient, and it's paid off for him so far today.
Let's go to the pits again, Jan Bikus.
Well, to answer that question, they've told Paul Tracy, you're looking good on fuel. You're getting exactly the mileage we want. In fact, now they told him we need 2.1 miles per gallon. So if that number drops, that would mean that they are expecting they will, in fact, make it to the end.
As Barry Green, the team owner, of course, Paul Tracy, with the help of the onboard technology, the computers that sit on that car can set that Pi dash that he has and know exactly what his fuel mileage is lap to lap. Tracy Franchitti. This is Richie Hearn. Now, Richie's back in 11th place right now. In fact, for a bit, he was heading up a little battle with Mimo Gidley and Cristiano D'Amata, but this car has its rear jack deployed. It's not deployed solidly so that it's keeping the car from contact with the ground, but the rear jack on this car is sitting down, and that can't be helping.
And I wonder if that's the extra noise we're hearing in the audio of his onboard. You can see it scraping the ground going over the bumps, and you can hear it, I believe, in the back of the engine sound there.
Yeah, but look at it. Despite all that, Richie's right there up in the middle of this battle. And this is all fight for position.
Richie, as we've said, has had a great weekend. He's in 10th place now. We watched Herta just a little while ago get around Jan Magnussen, but Jan Magnussen now still fighting with Mauricio. Magnussen in 9th place, Richie Hearn in 10th place. And also, Mimo Gidley, who's just right there entering the picture, has also had a very, very good race, running between 10th and 12th, almost the entire distance.
The only one who's not in that fight is Gilles de Ferran, who was just passed by Mauricio Guzman. It's a four-way fight for 8th, Guzman, Magnussen, Hearn, and Mimo Gidley. Of the teams, Team Cool Green running 1st and 2nd. Newman Haas is 3rd and 4th. And Team Rahal is 6th and 7th. Whoa, de Ferran skates out there. Gary Gerald.
Quick update on Christian Fittipaldi. We've known all along they've been in the fuel conservation mode. He's been doing his best. Bottom line right now is the only way they're going to be able to finish without stopping for a splash is to continue to lean and conserve. Consequently, he may have to sacrifice a position or two as he continues to get pressure from his teammate Andretti.
8 laps to go. We are going to take you to the checkered flag, uninterrupted on this race. Michael Andretti still works on 3rd place. Christian Fittipaldi, his teammate, back after sitting out several races due to injury, head injury when he got in the wall in a test at St. Louis.
And we can see with the onboard there that Christian is short shifting. You can actually see him start to brake a little bit earlier. So now we're on board with Michael Andretti trying to hunt down his teammate. I would think that he might be in a similar predicament here. Christian Fittipaldi pulling out a little bit of room. We've just learned that Tony Kanaan has to do a splash and go, which will take him out of 5th place. Approaching the final corner before the pit straight. One thing I wanted to talk about, Paul, is how Paul Tracy's fortunes have changed in just 1 year. Still a Renard Honda Firestone equipped car. Tony Cicali came in at the beginning of the year, has really calmed Paul down, got him focused. But yet with the same crew, the same team, remember what a disaster, what a difficult year he had last year. 1 year later now, he missed that first race in Homestead. He's come up to 3rd in the championship and has had so many great consistent runs this year. And once again, he's done it. It shows you the driver may be the same with the same equipment, but yet just a few changes in personnel or just a difference in confidence or approach to racing, and everything else changes.
You see that? They kind of looked like Dario Franchitti's junk still laying out on the edge of the race course. Haven't got it cleared. There was a winglet laying out there. Jan Bucas.
Well, it's an interesting discussion.
Keep doing what you're doing. Stay focused.
There's an interesting discussion for Team Green. Barry Green is considering asking Paul Tracy to let Dario Franchitti go by for championship implications. He's been going back and forth between his two teams. But I just asked him, will you do it? He says we can't make up our mind because we're very concerned about Michael Andretti, who is also close in the championship, and we don't want to do anything that's going to get us in trouble. So he's thinking about it, and obviously we will find out soon if that championship overall for Franchitti is more important than that place for Tracy and Michael Andretti.
You got a glimpse there of Tony Cicali, the master aerodynamicist, who working with Team Green.
And Tony's more than just an engineer. He's also a philosopher and a driver coach, and that's what's made the difference this year for Paul Tracy.
Back with Max Pappas. You've seen his up and down movement. He's moving on Tony Kanaan now. This is a battle for 5th place. Pappas takes it away. So Tony Kanaan in the McDonald's car drops back. Tracy still leads. Franchitti, then Fittipaldi. 5 to go. Now the gas and the gas only. watching externally was that maybe Tracy would have to stop as early as 96, maybe on 98. According to Team Green, maybe not at all.
And we're hearing some radio conversations with some of the drivers in the top 5 that they may have to pit, they may not have to pit.
Parker, one of those is Christian Fittipaldi. Ed Nathman just run over from Michael Andretti's team. There's an animated discussion going on over here right now, and I don't know if Ed is lobbying to get Michael by Christian or not, but Christian's guys aren't buying it. But there's some long faces down here. I think the realization has hit them here as they continue to watch the telemetry that Fittipaldi may in fact have to get that splash after all.
Michael Andretti is 4th behind Fittipaldi. If he does, you would think that Tracy should have to.
And remember, coming into this race, Paul, even though we've concentrated on Montoya and Franchitti, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th in the championship. That's Adrian Fernandez, Pappas, DeFerrin, Fittipaldi, Moore, and Vassar. We're only separated by 9 points. So there is a fight here on the way into this race. Michael Andretti in 4th place. So the whole championship below Franchitti and Montoya is up for grabs.
And now they are reporting that they are going to bring Christian in, right, Gary?
Yeah, they've just gone over the wall, and we believe Tony Kanaan is also going to have to come in.
Tony Kanaan's already on the pit road, so Tony Kanaan comes in from that battle with Pappas. And his 6th place position, he comes all the way down. He's the 3rd pit from the end.
He goes by us so slowly, Paul, I think Kanaan may have run it almost out of fuel.
As we watch Franchitti, it's the way the points sit at the moment, goes from a 29 deficit to a mere 13 deficit from Montoya to Franchitti. This thing could go all the way to the end of the season at Fontana, that championship fight. 2 more races to go. Surfers Paradise, Australia, and then at Fontana Speedway, California Speedway. Christian Fittipaldi, as anticipated, is in. Gary.
Oh, this is just crushing for this team. They've battled and battled and battled, and here comes Christian now for just the quick splash. It should be very, very quick. He's already got it here, and he's out.
Well, there was some dancing going on there with the air jack man. As they came out, you could hear him select the gear. The car started to move. They timed that perfectly.
That gives Michael Andretti 3rd place that Christian occupied. What about the Team Green
Scott
cars?
Pruitt's coming up behind you. Don't argue with him at all. Just let him drive by.
Barry Green.
While you're listening to Barry Green, I just spoke with him, and he told me he has decided he is going to let Paul Tracy stay where he is. And primarily because Christian Fittipaldi had to pit, that put Michael Andretti right behind Dario, and they do not want to take a chance. They think that Paul Tracy has earned this. They're going to leave things the way they fall.
98 laps complete, 2 to go. There's your question mark. The 26 car, Paul Tracy. 12.7 seconds over his teammate Dario Franchitti. Not only the implications in the battle for the championship, but the top of this, actually first 10 positions in this field can have some pretty serious implications for the entire championship battle.
Paul Tracy hasn't put a wheel wrong all day long. You can see he's giving himself just a little bit of room. Don't mistake that for not driving hard. Obviously, he's still driving extremely hard.
No mistakes.
1 lap to go, and they've got him lean down even more, Paul.
Well, he's got plenty of pad. Well, listen to the engine. No, you listen for any hiccup there.
Nice and steady.
Coming up next, World News Tonight Sunday. ABC Sports is online at ESPN.com, part of the Go Network. Watching Paul Tracy, he's still under power, circulating on the final lap. Dario Franchitti crossed the line, 13 seconds behind Paul Tracy in 2nd place. Then Michael Andretti, Max Pappas, Brian Herta, Mauricio Guzman. That was the top 5 as they passed under the white flag, signaling 1 more lap to go. And And here is the unofficial results. Tracy's going to take it. He takes the checkered flag.
Great job, mate. Great job. Now, the TV people may be talking to you on the radio, okay?
And in fact, I'm on the radio. Paul Tracy, this is Paul Page. Congratulations. Nice job.
Oh, I got to thank the whole crew, Team Cool Green, in part, Tony Sekeli. The guy is the master. I got to thank the whole team, everybody on the crew. Great job on the pit stop. Hey, I can't wait to get back there and give everybody a great big hug.
Paul Tracy, thanks a lot. It is so cool to talk to a driver as he is accepting his victory. So Paul Tracy has taken the win. The championship battle continues on because of Montoya's bad luck early on. I'm Paul Page for Parker Johnstone, Gary Gerould, and Jan Beekes. So long.